show me a move. Good news, everyone. The TV we see onions have
Welcome to 20th Century Boy. My name is Radio Mike. And I'm back, baby. And this is the inside of my mind, which is the normal thing that I say at the start of this podcast. But I haven't done a podcast in a month. I did a little bonus little message explaining that I just needed some time away from the podcast. And, well, I'm back. The podcast is back. We are full speed ahead with 20th Century Boy for the rest of the year, every Thursday, as always. And I want to start off this episode by saying, first of all, if you're new to the podcast, probably a very good time to have joined the club, because we're sort of doing, like, this is like, you know, a month since any episodes came out, and yeah, so we're kind of sort of starting fresh in a way. Great time to join. Welcome. If you're a returning listener, thanks for sticking with me and thanks for your patience, because I just unexpectedly and with no indication or warning at all, I just stopped doing the podcast. And I realized that in some ways that's kind of a selfish move, because a lot of people were actually getting a lot out of this podcast, which is awesome. And a lot of people really like this podcast, which is also really, really awesome. So thanks for coming back. Sorry for disappearing there for a bit, but it's been a really, really tricky time here in Melbourne. And we're still in lockdown. We have been for ages. And it's just been really, really hard. Like, it's been really depressing. I think everyone's just been really depressed, and generally speaking, everyone's really over lockdown and really over COVID, and we're just doing our best to live in this isolated way where we can't really see any of our friends or do anything fun. And yeah, it's horrible. It's really, really horrible. So I just took some time off, and I got into a really bad state where, and I've been quite open about my mental health on this podcast before, but I just got into this really bad state where just nothing, it was like my brain was incapable of producing any dopamine. It's just like everything felt flat. I didn't want to do anything. I didn't want to watch anything. Didn't want to listen to podcasts. I didn't want to do anything. Like nothing was like enthralling me. Everything was just sort of, I don't know, everything just felt quite static. And yeah, I just kind of missed a week, and then I missed another week, and then I missed another week, and then I missed another week. I think I've missed 4 or 5 weeks, and I'm really sorry. I'm really happy that I'm feeling really good now. I'm feeling really, really, really good. I'm much, much better than I was a few weeks ago, which is great. I feel like I'm back to normal. So I appreciate you sticking with the podcast. It was honestly the best part about taking the time off was realizing how great you guys, the listeners of this podcast, if you're new to the podcast, unfortunately this doesn't count you because but the listeners of this podcast were just reaching out to me. A lot of you were just like, hey, where's the podcast? And I guess I just realized that this podcast is something that people really like and look forward to listening to. So that meant a lot. And to anyone who reached out or just, offered a chat, that was really, really comforting. So many of you did. So I really appreciate that. It's been really humbling, the response I got to taking a month off the podcast with no warning. So I'm really grateful. And as I said, at the moment, I'm good. I feel like I'm in a really good spot. I'm in a really good spot with my diet. I'm in a really good spot with my exercise regime. I have lost 10 kilos, which is awesome because weight just creeps up on you when you just keep gaining and gaining weight. Then you realize none of your pants fit you anymore and you can't go to Kmart because it's closed because of lockdown. So then you're like, I should probably lose some weight so I can fit into my clothes. So I've lost 10 kilos, which I was always like, while I was still doing the pod, I was exercising heaps and eating really well and changing my diet, but I didn't want to talk about it on the pod in case I failed. But I've lost 10, hoping to lose a little bit more to reach my target weight. But yeah, I just readjusted my diet. I started exercising more. It is possible to lose weight during COVID. I know everyone thinks it's hard because we're inside. It is possible. Set your mind to it. Set some goals. Set some exercise goals. Set some walking goals. Walk faster. Cut out all fizzy drink. That's what I did. I cut out all fizzy drink. I'm just drinking water and sometimes soda water, which is fizzy drink, but I mean I'm not drinking any cola or anything, not drinking any alcohol, and eating a much more balanced diet. So I feel really good. I feel really, really good. And I started thinking to myself, like, I know in the past when I've been more active and fitter and healthier, I've just felt better. I've just felt more confident. I've felt, just generally, I've felt better. And instead of like obsessing over my weight and everything like that, I'm just like, oh, why don't I just try and exercise more and eat better and just see how I feel. And I feel better. I feel great, which is awesome. So it's been really crazy. It's been a really crazy time where looking like maybe in about 10 days or so from now, we can come out of lockdown, but we're still not really sure. Everything's a bit up in the air. So I hope you're all doing well. I hope everyone's coping, especially my Melbourne listeners. But I do realize that I may have done a very silly thing, because obviously when your podcast is going really well, is getting more and more popular each week, and the listenership has been steadily climbing every month for 6 months, of course the most obvious thing to do is tank all of that momentum and ruin all of your progress by not doing a podcast for a month. And now I'm worried that all the work that I did on promoting it and doing videos and trying to get the podcast out there to people is totally done and left in the lurch, and we're going to lose all of that progress and lose all our listeners. So here's what we need to do today. And I know this is pretty rich, me asking you to help me save the podcast, but we need to save 20th Century Boy. We need to save this podcast. Australia's only and possibly the world's only winnable podcast. You can win this podcast. We'll get into that a bit later. I don't want to bombard new people or bombard anyone with too much of the show's lore. At the moment, we're focusing on saving the podcast, not winning the podcast. So I want everyone to know that 20th Century Boy is back. Everyone needs to know, and they need to listen to this episode. So when you listen to this episode, when you get to this bit, what I want you to do is take a screenshot or get any, record of you listening to the show, get on Instagram or any social media app, put it on your story and say, the world's best podcast is finally back. In the story, in the caption. The world's best podcast is finally back. Hashtag save the podcast. Hashtag save TCB. Hashtag save TCB. The world's best podcast. I'm asking for a lot, but and tag me in it. That way everyone sees it, and everyone sees the picture of this podcast and the line, the world's best podcast. Now, no one ever said we're the world's best podcast, but we're just saying the world's best podcast is finally back. Could be any podcast. But what I want you to do, put it in your story so everyone can see it. The news will travel around Australia, around the world, that the podcast is back. We get lots of listeners. We make some hype around it, and maybe we get a few new listeners. And yeah, that's how we save the podcast. Hashtag save TCB. I want to see, guys, I know there's a fair few people listen to this. I'd be disappointed if I saw no stories. I would be really disappointed if no one does one of these stories and tags me in it. I want a mega story on my story with all of your stories saying save TCB. I want everyone to see that this podcast is back so we can replenish the listeners that we may have lost. So please, hashtag save TCB. That is your homework. From now on, there will be homework each week, maybe if I can be bothered. And your homework this week is to do that. Definitely a lot to catch up on. We left the podcast last on quite an interesting note, which was the reveal or non-reveal of questionable father, someone who was haunting the podcast for a while. I figured out who he was thanks to cyber sleuth George, who helped out with finding out who it was. So thanks for that, Cyber Sleuth George. That was great. She did a really, really good job. In fact, welcome to the radio family again, Cyber Sleuth George. Great work. And that was the end of, quite a saga, but there is a few things I would like to follow up on from the last episode. First of all, though, I want to talk about what I've been doing, what I've been playing, because I talk a lot about the pop culture I've been consuming in this pod. I've been playing the brand new Crash Bandicoot game, Crash Bandicoot 4, It's About Time, and this is such a good game. Like, I'm having so much fun playing this game at the moment. If you're unfamiliar with Crash Bandicoot, it is a platforming game that originated on the original PlayStation, and then the series kind of fell by the wayside during the 2000s and the 2010s. It just lost popularity very quickly, but then they remade the original 3 games for the PS4 a few years ago, and Crash Crash Team Racing, which was the racing game. They remade all those games and they were just incredibly done. People really, really liked them. And then finally it got a long-awaited proper follow-up sequel in the form of Crash Bandicoot 4 a few weeks ago from now. And I've been playing it. It is just so good. It is exactly what Crash Bandicoot 4 always needed to be. And I am just having such a fun time playing this game. So go and pick it up and play it. The Crash Bandicoot games were always you wouldn't think so because they kind of look like kids' games, but they are genuinely some of the hardest games that I have ever played. They are incredibly hard. You can do different challenges on each levels where you have to break all the boxes, or do time trials where you have to basically beat the level without dying and under a certain amount of time. Basically speed running the game. And that is the hardest challenge I've ever done. I 100%ed every original Crash Bandicoot game, and it was incredibly hard, impossibly hard almost. But it is one of my proudest gaming achievements that I completed all of those. So I'm planning on doing that with Crash Bandicoot 4. And I was also doing, jump on twitch.tv/itsradiomike. I was streaming me playing Crash over the weekend. I might do a bit more streaming. And I also did Super Smash Bros. Streaming. So I do want to start doing a little bit more streaming. And that was really fun. So thanks to everyone who watched the stream. I was also on the Hamish and Andy podcast again a few weeks ago, which was really, really fun. I did a prank on Hamish's wife, Zoe, and I know this has been out for a while, so people have seen it, but I'd love to play it here. It was a lot of fun. Basically, Hamish was upset because she was not correctly using the Apple TV remote, and I had to pretend to be a representative from Apple and and pretty much teach her or coach her on how to use it. I'll put a highlight bit of that here.
Can you call my wife now and you say, hi, it's Mike from Apple, and we've been noticing on your Apple TV you've just been having a few problems using the remote, and would you like to give a few tips? And I've written down 4 of her key areas I think you can improve on. Here we go.
Hello, Zoe speaking.
Oh, hi Zoe. This is Mike here from Apple. How's it going?
Good, Mike. How are you?
Yeah, really good. Hey, I just wanted to give you a call because we've noticed that you're having a few issues with your remote control on your Apple TV. So I just wanted to give you some tips on how to use that a bit better.
Very good, Mr. Blake.
What?
Very good. Very good.
This is Pierre. I'm Mike's manager. You should hear him out.
Sure.
So when you're pausing a Netflix show, you seem to sometimes hit the menu button instead of the big black button at the top.
Yep, I know.
So when you restart after pausing, sometimes you'll accidentally hit the menu button again. Pretty weird. You just want to hit that pause button again. It's pretty easy. Sometimes we've noticed when you're trying to rewind or fast forward, you're doing pretty aggressive swipes there. You really just need to do some gentle swipes. That's how you do a small amount. Your swipes tend to be going 5 minutes ahead or behind, which is far too much time.
Mike, I don't think it's fair that you're putting this all back on the consumer. Maybe it's your remote that needs to be remade and redone to be less slippery.
The design of the remote's pretty optimal.
Is it?
We think so, yeah.
Yeah, of course you do.
I've got one more. You can actually just use the forward 10 seconds or back 10 seconds. You don't actually need a swipe. You can just hover your finger over the button and then
I've
press
actually
it.
never been able to nail that.
Yeah. Well, it is one of the more advanced techniques, I suppose. That was a lot of fun, and so many people reached out to me and said that was so funny, which was awesome. I was really nervous doing that. I think you can kind of hear it in my voice a bit, but I was just trying to be me, and I think I did, and I think people really liked it. And before we go on to follow-ups, one thing. And I'm also appearing on the show a few more times in the next few weeks. So look out for that. They are real classic mic things. I think people who like this pod might find it really, really funny, but I had a blast doing these upcoming things, so enjoy those as well. Finally, before we move on, I wanted to plug one thing that I had a really good time doing the other day, and that was the Hump Day Replay podcast, which is part of another podcast I've guested on, which is the Daily Talk Show with Josh and Tommy. The Hump Day Replay podcast is the podcast with this guy, Georgie Boy, who works on that show. It's like a spin-off podcast of the Daily Talk Show. It's kind of confusing. I did that yesterday, and you can find it. Type in Hump Day Replay. I'll post about it on Insta, but please go and listen to it because I had such a good time. It was led by Georgie Boy, and then they had Mason, Grace, and Jess on as well. So there were 5 of us, and I just thought it was Georgie Boy asked me a lot of questions about like he clearly did his research, and I felt it just was awesome. Like that he's a listener of this podcast as well. Welcome to the radio family, Radio Georgie Boy. And we talked a lot about 20th Century Boy. We talked a lot about working on podcasts and working on Hamish and Andy. But if you want to hear some stuff about like the inside of this podcast and how this podcast works, and just me talking about it, like definitely go and listen to that Hump Day Replay episode. I think there's a few really funny bits. It was a lot of fun. I had an absolute blast doing it. I want to go on again. So please go and check that out. I'll leave a link in the description to this pod, as well as a link to my other Daily Talk Show appearance, which was for Release the Sounds, my band. That would be awesome if people could check that out. I would really, really appreciate it. It was so much fun. So thank you. Thank you to Georgie Boy for preparing such a great time. So where we left off on the show, I started a new segment that I don't even think I made an opener for, but it was basically a time-honoured radio, typical and a non-creative radio segment that I've heard done on so many other shows that was essentially, what are your misheard song lyrics? And the reason I brought this up was because I had a really embarrassing misheard song lyric in the form of Taylor Swift's song Love Story, where in the bit where it says, na 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 na, pulled out a ring and said, Mary, and then it's like, marry me, Juliet, you never have to be alone. If you know the song, you know. I always thought the bit where it said, marry me, Juliet, was Mary meet Juliet. Like someone was introducing someone called Mary to someone called Juliet. And I just always thought that until literally like 2 months ago, where I finally found out. I'm like, oh, it's actually marry me, Juliet. So I asked you guys to send in your misheard song lyrics. Heaps came in, so thanks to people for sending them in and wondering when we might hear them on the show. First one came in, well, I'm going to play 2 today. Feel free to keep sending them in. I don't know if we'll keep doing this segment all the time. This one came in from Radio Huzzer. Welcome to the radio family, Radio Huzzer. He left this voice message on 1-800-438-353, which is the official phone number of this show. You can give it a call anytime. Let's hear the jingle.
If you've got a contribution to the podcast, there's only one number you see. Go 1-800-438-353.
Call it anytime, just like the jingle says. That jingle's from Radio Scooter and Radio Alex Sky. Thanks for that, guys. But Radio Huzzer, back to you, and thanks for participating over on 1-800-438-353. He's left this voice message, which I found really funny.
Hey Mike, it's Radio Huzzer here. I was listening to your segment about misheard song lyrics, and I had the best one when I was a young kid. The Rolling Stones song, I Can't Get No Satisfaction. My father used to have a copy of that, which was a live version, and the lyrics were, well, the lyrics are questionable, muddled at best when you listen to it, but on the live version, they're a bit rougher because Mick Jagger's going for it. And so instead of hearing I Can't Get No, I heard My Name's Gecko. And so I used to sing along, My Name's Gecko. And I got pulled up on it pretty quickly, but it's become a running joke when that song comes on that we all sing My Name's Gecko. Thought you get a kick out of that. Bye.
Oh, that is great. I actually thought when I was listening to this that he was going to do a My Name Jeff joke. Like I thought My Name Jeff is an old meme of the Luke and Lewis radio show that I used to work on. I thought he was going to do that. But then he ended up being My Name's Gecko, which was really funny. So that's like, that's on par with Mary Meet Juliet. But the other one, and this one came in from Radio Nacho Cheese. Welcome to the radio family, Radio Nacho Cheese. And Nacho Cheese, he's the best friend of the show. If you are new to the show, familiarize yourself with the name Nacho Cheese. He's a recurring character on the podcast. He's the anonymous best friend of the podcast. None of us know who he is, but he leaves a monthly message to the show offering support to all of the listeners. But this time he's just written in to contribute to the show with a misheard song lyric. Take it away, Nach.
Hey Mikey, it's Nacho Cheese here, mate. Just doing one of those misheard lyrics things for you. So I've got two for you. One was my mistake and the other was my friend's mistake. So my one was the song by Gwen Stefani, No Doubt. So when she says, don't tell me 'cause it hurts, I thought it was don't tell me cousin Herb.
Nacho Cheese put his own grabs in.
Yeah, I thought she was having a conversation with her cousin Herb. And my mate's one was the Justin Bieber song, Friends. So where the Bieb says the line, like I've got ulterior motives, my friend thought it was like I got all teary emotive. Like I got ulterior motives. So yeah, that wouldn't even be a correct sentence. So I don't know how he got that one. But anyway, love you, Mike. That's my entry. Thanks, mate. Bye.
I really like the Justin Bieber one because I feel like, and we'll just play it again. Like I got ulterior motives. Like I feel like that one is actually passable. Like I can hear it as like I got all teary, and it could be like I got all teary, comma, emotive. Like that would kind of make sense, but it is like I've got ulterior motives. That was really cool. Send in your misheard song lyrics. I would love to know if there's any more funny ones like that. A few more came in, so I'll probably use some of the other ones that came in, but send them in. 1-800-438-353. RadioMikePod@gmail.com is the email. Radio.mike on Instagram. Go and message me on any of those. I'd love to know, preferably a voice message because it adds so much to the show and I love getting your voices involved. The other thing that came in that I realize now is it's not that strong, but I thought it was kind of funny because it took me a second to realize what this was. But I was doing a segment on the show which was a theory about how I came up with this theory about how there are so many numbers. There's an infinite amount of numbers. So theoretically, there are numbers out there that have never been said by a person out loud before. For example, 972,142,623,143,221. Very likely that has never been said before. So I started a segment on the show where people can claim their numbers and name their exclusive numbers, claim a number on their own that's never been said before, and it was called this. Name your number! Yeah, it's Name Your Number. And thanks to everyone who has been calling in with their number that they would like to name. Most people taking it quite seriously as well, except for one person. I'm not going to induct them into the radio family, but it even took me a second to realize what this segment was for until I remembered this segment. Like it took me a second to realize what why this person was doing this, and then I realized what it was. So a voice message came in from this person who has decided to claim their own number. I'll play it for you now.
Hello, Mike. My name Radio Borat. I'd like to name my number now. 6939.
Yeah, so someone has decided to abuse the phone line to leave a Borat. Well, I guess it was Borat, Radio Borat. Welcome to the radio family, Radio Borat. I guess he's decided to leave a voice message claiming the number 69. Not quite how it works. Also, I'm pretty sure 69 would probably be one of the most commonly used numbers in common vernacular, probably because of its sexual undertones, but I'm not really sure. I don't know anything about that. I don't want to talk about this any further, but feel free to send in your name, your numbers as well. Now, one person also DM'd me on Insta trying to pitch a spin-off to this segment, and I'm really sorry, I've lost the message. I don't know who it was. Please send me a message so I can credit you for this so I know who it was. But someone sent in this other theory that was, there are some songs in the world, like say like whatever the most popular song in the world is right now. Like I'll log into my Spotify and I'll just go to like top charts, for example. And so I'll go global top 50. The current one is Mood by 24 Golden, 24K Golden, a song that I have never heard of, have no idea what this song is, but it's got 273 million listens. So this guy's theory was, and I'm not sure if it would be true, but it's like there are so many listens on that song that theoretically the song is being listened to so much that there may never be a point at which the song is not playing somewhere in the world. Like, and that's pretty serious. Like, that's a pretty serious claim. I'm sure there's some maths in that involving like time zones and stuff and where the song is actually popular. But if someone can figure out if that could be possible or not, that would be awesome. Because I've always thought, what are the chances that if you're walking down the street by yourself, so you're walking down the street by yourself, listening to a popular song on Spotify with your headphones in, what is the probability that the person that you you walk past someone on the street, they also have headphones on? How crazy would it be if you were both listening to the same song? And you'd never know. Like, how many times has that happened, but two people have just had no idea they're listening to the exact same song? It must happen. Like, with really big songs, it must happen that two people are both listening to the same song on Spotify and they walk past each other. I think that is a really, really cool thing to ponder, sort of like Name Your Number. And I'm just putting it out there for you to ponder it. Send in things you'd like to ponder. That can be the question of the week. Anything that you think should be pondered like that, just send them in. Okay, so we're going to break things up a bit now by returning to a time-honoured classic segment on this show. One of the favourite segments of the show of all time, if I say so myself, and it's called this.
Lost in translation. Lost in translation.
Yeah, it is Lost in Translation. This is a really fun segment that you can participate in at home while listening to this podcast. You don't even have to do anything except listen, which you're already doing, so you fit all the criteria to play this game. Lost in Translation works as follows. I put in a popular song lyric from a popular song, like the main song lyric from a popular song. I put it into Google Translate. I put it in and translate it to 20 different languages. Count them, 20. And then I translate it back to English. And whatever is spat out on the other side by Google, I play on the show. And your job, well, this is where you actually have to do something. You have to use your brain to figure out what the song originally was. I'll give a few clues like I usually do. This is a solo artist. It's one of their biggest songs. They are an artist who has been most prominent in the 2010s decade. Everyone knows this person. I seriously doubt anyone would not know this song. It is a very, very big song. I've probably given away too much already, so Google, please initiate the translation process protocol.
Initiating translation process protocol. 22% complete. 50% complete. 77% complete. 100% complete. Translation result is, if you really want to see it, I love you, you gotta love me. If you think I'll continue the good work, you have to love yourself.
All right, that is this week's Lost in Translation. Lots to unpack there. Remember, it's been translated over 20 different languages. See how you go. The best way to get on the show is to leave a voice message, 1-800-438-353. As I said before, I'd like to play out all the guesses, and feel free to have a guess even if you're not sure. I think having wrong answers is also interesting to listen to as well, to see what people thought. And explain your thought process when we do it as well. That would also be very, very helpful. Okay, in the last or second to last episode before the break, I talked about this.
Big Jack, now at Hungry Jack's. Bigger, better, flamier. Special sauce and flame-grilled Aussie beef. Get free delivery for limited time only at Hungry Jack's. The burgers are better.
And there have been numerous developments on this topic that I have been dying to talk about, essentially. If you were unfamiliar with this, Hungry Jack's, for American listeners, that is Burger King. Here in Australia, we call it Hungry Jack's. Unfortunately, Jack is always hungry. He's Hungry Jack's. And Hungry Jack's has launched a burger called the Big Jack, obviously piggybacking off the success of the Big Mac. And, you know, it's Hungry Jack's making an obvious attempt to essentially mock McDonald's, pretty much saying we've made a Big Mac. It is pretty much as good, or if not better, than the Big Mac. So just come to Hungry Jack's. If you want a Big Mac, Hungry Jack's is saying if you want a Big Mac, just come to Hungry Jack's. We can make one for you. That's essentially what they're saying. My point last time I talked about this was that I personally think, I have nothing against Hungry Jack's. It tastes great. So does Macca's. I like them both. But my point was, and a few people I don't think liked it or understood exactly what I was saying. I was just saying most people, including me, if there was a McDonald's and a Hungry Jack's next to each other, they would go to McDonald's. Hungry Jack's is the weaker brand, undeniably. And most people see Hungry Jack's as a knockoff Macca's. It's the same way people see Pepsi as like the second Coke. Pepsi's great. In fact, I prefer Pepsi. I still say, can you pass the Coke? I prefer Pepsi Cola, but Coca-Cola is the stand-in for cola, just like McDonald's is the stand-in for fast food, right? Macca's and Hungry Jack's, they're interchangeable. However, most people would prefer Macca's, I believe. It is a stronger brand. That's not to say Hungry Jack's is bad. People thought I was saying Hungry Jack's is bad. Hungry Jack's, great. Would have it any day of the week. But if there was a Macca's next door, I'd go to Macca's for sure. But I thought initially when I talked about this ad and the Big Jack move as a marketing scheme, I was criticizing it because I was saying it was just a desperate and short-sighted attempt from Hungry Jack's to be relevant, but they were unintentionally drawing attention to the fact that they're not Macca's, their biggest weakness. And I thought that was a terrible move. However, there have been some developments on this. I've tried to find the new ad, but I haven't been able to find it. If you hear it now, that's because I have put it in post. And I found it. If you do not hear it, I'm going to explain it now. So now what happened was McDonald's McDonald's started legal action against Hungry Jack's for the Big Jack. And they're trying to, I don't know, say it's infringement or whatever it is. They're trying to get them to desist on the Big Jack. And I gotta say, guys, I've got a lot of respect for what Hungry Jack's did next, because they're now running a follow-up ad. They're now running a follow-up ad for the Big Jack where they openly mock the legal system of where they openly mock the legal action from McDonald's. They don't directly mention McDonald's, but it's obvious who they're talking about. And they say some other burger chain is saying the Big Jack is too much like some American burger. And it is just like the decision from whoever works at Hungry Jack's marketing to double down on this and go, no, we're not quitting. In fact, we're going to draw attention to the legal battle. We're going to draw attention to it. Any publicity is good publicity. There's no such thing as bad publicity. And we're going to mock this legal battle. Incredibly brave, brazen, and just aggressive marketing tactic from Hungry Jack's. They have done, I reckon that is a great move. Absolutely great move. And they've gained a lot of respect for me in the Big Jack, Big Mac controversy of 2020. In fact, okay, I'm going to say this. As soon as lockdown ends, because I don't think there's a Hungry Jack's within 5 kilometers of where I live, but everyone, as soon as you can, I want you to go out and buy a Big Jack. Buy a Big Jack. That's your homework for today. There's 2 pieces of homework from today's app. Buy a Big Jack, take a picture of it, send it to me so I know you did, and give me a review of it and what you think. And as soon as lockdown ends, I am going to buy a Big Jack and a Big Mac. I'm going to eat them both on the podcast and I'm going to review them live as soon as I can. As soon as I can have both a Big Jack and a Big Mac on the same day, that is what I'm going to do on this podcast. I'm going to review the Big Jack against the Big Mac. That is my next goal. But in the meantime, I want you guys feel free to do the same. Actually, if you live in walking distance from a Hungry Jack's and a McDonald's, or you can get there, you're not in lockdown, you can drive to both. Get a Big Mac and a Big Jack and send in your review. I'm going to do it at the earliest possible point for me on the podcast. And if you'd like to do it too, I'd love to hear your thoughts. All right, guys, getting close to the end of this week's ep, but obviously, I've been away for a month, the podcast has been away for a month, but, well, a lot of things about this podcast have been away for a long time. And there's one man on this podcast that loves being on the podcast that I'd love to get him back for this comeback episode of 20th Century Boy. That man's name is Dave. Dave is my cousin, and for long-time listeners of the show, you will know all about this. New listeners, listen up. Old listeners, listen up anyway. Dave is my cousin. When I was 20 years old, I asked him to do a podcast with me. He laughed in my face and wouldn't do it. So now, at random points in my life, I ring my cousin Dave out of the blue, and I basically do a makeshift fake podcast with him called The Dave and Mike Show. This will probably be, I think, like maybe episode 6 or 7 of the Dave and Mike Show. So I'm going to give Dave a call now. And what I thought, because like I see the Dave and Mike Show is like, I'm training Dave. I'm teaching Dave how to do a podcast, how to get more confident at speaking, how to get better at, those kinds of things. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to call up Dave. I'm going to welcome him back to the show, going to tell him it's been a while. And then I'm going to pitch to him 3 great stories from our family that you guys wouldn't be familiar with, but me and Dave are familiar with. And I'm going to get Dave to tell the story on air in his best on air, podcaster voice, and just see how he goes with it. See how it all pans out for Dave. I reckon he'll do a great job because these are stories that in our family, we revisit them a lot. So he's used to telling these stories. So I think this is the best way to ease him in. And if you hear I'm going to give a headline for each story, you tell me if you want to hear any in more detail, and that's what me and Dave will do moving forward. All right, I'm going to punch the number in now, and we're going to do the next episode of the Dave and Mike Show.
Hello.
Hey, it's Mike. How are ya?
Good. How you doing?
Good. You finished up work for the day?
Just sending my last email.
Oh, awesome, man. So what are you doing tonight?
Deciding on Macca's or KFC.
Nice. Well, that's good. In a way, you're pretty free up for time because we're doing one of these.
Oh, no.
Well, his name is Dave, and his name is Mike. Together they are the Dave and Mike Show. Dave and Mike Show. Together they are the Dave and Mike Show.
Welcome to the Dave and Mike Show. We haven't been on for a while. Dave, how have you been?
I've been good. How you been?
Oh, sorry, it seemed like you were about to say something. What were you going to say?
I thought we decided that that was the end of the podcast. No.
I don't remember thinking that.
No.
So I guess I had some stuff planned for this week's show, but I think you've brought a great bit of content, Macca's or KFC for dinner. What are you leaning towards?
Probably Macca's, because it's down the road, it's closer, and I haven't had it in a while.
What do you reckon you'd order?
I don't know. What should I go, man?
I don't know.
Double quarter pounder?
Big Mac, maybe? Yeah, Big Mac's pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I thought for this week's episode of Dave and Mike, because I'm teaching you how to be a good podcaster like me, I thought I'm going to give you 3 classic stories from our family, right? And
yeah,
you're familiar with all these stories, you know all these stories, and then you're going to choose one of these stories and tell it on the podcast to all our listeners, okay?
Right now?
Yeah, so you have to choose one. So the 3 stories that I reckon are classic family stories. 1, my brother Dan accidentally hitting you on the head with a tennis racket. Nonna's story about the chicken in the oven. And number 3, what happened at Christmas in 2008 when we were listening to the CD? So that's called a tease. All the listeners are probably really intrigued by all 3 of those stories, but you've got to choose one to tell now.
I'm the worst storyteller there is, man.
No, you're really good at it. Just choose one of them. Right, well, what one would you choose? Like, what's the strongest?
I would have chosen the chicken one.
You wouldn't have chosen that?
But I would have. But
it's more Nonna's story to tell.
It's Nonna's story to tell, and you have to tell it with the Italian accent, otherwise it's not that funny, right?
Yeah.
So,
all right. Well, what about I replace that one for the story about the light shop next to the park? You familiar with that one?
I'm familiar with that one, but.
Now remember, none of the listeners know any of these stories, so you've got to start giving them context. You got to just start.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Let's give it a shot.
Yeah. Which one?
You can help me out. We'll go to the light shop.
All right.
We'll go to the light shop.
All right, guys. You're about to hear a great classic story in our family, the light shop story, and I like this one because I'm sort of the underdog in this story, aren't I?
Well, I guess.
All right. Well,
I guess.
Kick off the story. I'll interrupt if you miss any details.
Okay, so back in the day, years and years ago, when I used to get dropped off and visit you guys, you and your brother, we'd go down to the local park in a neighbourhood, which is in the middle, of a normal suburban area.
There's no commercial,
around.
No commercial buildings anywhere.
Yeah, no busy streets, just in the suburbs. And after we'd been, kicked the footy or played basketball or thrown a frisbee, I can't even remember what we were doing. This was when we were, how old? What? 12 years old?
Well, you're 8 years older than me, so you were probably 20 and we were probably...
Am I that old? All right, maybe it was that. We would go to the milk bar, which happened to be right next to the park.
Yeah.
So it was the only little shop there, and we would get an ice cream or some nerds or some little lollies and stuff.
Yeah.
And we would do that pretty much every couple of weekends, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then we hadn't gone for a while.
Yep.
And I got over and I said, let's go down, play some basketball, and then we'll grab an ice cream like old times. And you said, I guess that's not going to be able to happen anymore. And I was like, well, how's that possible? Do they close down the milk bar? And he's like, no, they turned it into a light shop. And I was like, what do you mean they turned it into a light shop? Why would you turn a milk bar into a light shop? It's in the middle of nowhere.
And I was like probably 10 years old or so. So like it was pretty unlikely that the milk bar did turn into a light shop. And it did just feel like I was pulling your leg.
And you are a bit of a practical joker, I must say. So everyone was just like, why would they have turned it into a light shop? And he's like, yeah, it's all glass. I walked past the other day, it's all glass. You know, just light bulbs and lights and stuff.
Yeah.
And it just didn't compute in anyone's head. So we're just like, no, Mike, it's in the middle of nowhere. It's the smallest shop, tiny little milk bar. We're going down to the park and let's go grab an ice cream. And we walked down and surely enough it's been turned into a light shop, which just made no sense.
Yeah, so that's pretty much it. Maybe I think you kind of had to be there, but if you do, like, basically, it was kind of a boy who cried wolf scenario.
It was heartbreaking too.
Yeah, so I was trying to convince everyone that the milk bar had been turned into a light shop, and no one believed me. And then we got there, and of course, it was a light shop. And I just realized, I'm not sure if it's still there, but it's called LED Lights, and it's in Kew. So if you guys want to go and do a tour of a podcast tour, you can start off at LED Lights in Kew, Google it, and you'll find out where it is, and you can go see the light shop for yourself.
And this isn't a paid promotion, is it, Mike?
This is not a paid promotion with LED Lights, but good call disclosing it. Well, next week, do you want to do tennis racket in the head?
Why do you have to bring up these stories?
All right, well, we'll chat off air and we'll figure out what we're doing next week. But that's been another episode of...
Well, his name is Dave and his name is Mike. Together they are the Dave and Mike Show.
Dave Solo.
Hey, just on there.
Together they are the Dave and Mike Show.
Those weren't the lyrics, but were you trying to say something there?
Yeah. I was going to be like, this is not going to air, is it?
Yeah, this is going to air.
Oh, God.
All right, we'll catch up on the next step.
Hey, one more last thing, sorry.
Yeah.
Hey, when you call me during the day and, like, I'm in a meeting and stuff, and then you call, like, directly after, I kind of get a bit nervous because I think it's real urgent.
Oh.
Yeah, so... yeah.
Is this... So I called Dave twice earlier today to do this, but he wasn't available.
Yeah.
So you're saying not to do that because you get nervous?
Yeah, look, maybe you could give me a heads up that, you know, that's the podcast, and then maybe I'd write back and say something like, hey, maybe someone else is free today. I don't know.
All right, well, we'll think about that moving forward with the pod.
Yeah, then you wouldn't spring it up on me.
I think if you're not surprised, it doesn't have the same effect. Yeah, I think because we're trying to, you know, train you up for being on air, where you have to constantly be looking out for hazards. It's kind of like you're driving a car; you're just constantly looking for hazards. That's what I'm training you for. So if I gave you a forewarning, it wouldn't really work.
Yeah, because then I would plan for it, and it would be like professional and stuff, right?
We'll plan for next week.
Cool.
All right, I'll speak to you next week.
Thanks, mate. See ya.
Bye.
Bye.
All right, guys. Well, that's another edition of the Dave and Mike Show. A pretty good one. That was that's a classic story that's been retold for years. The boy who cried light shop. So please tell me again, if you visit LED Lights, the shop, definitely go down there and take a photo of you in front of it. I'd really like that. It's in Kew here in Melbourne. And that is about all we've got time for this week. Great to be back. Had a really good time doing this, and I hope you enjoyed listening to it. We'll be back next week. Send any correspondence to radiomikepod@gmail.com. Radio.mike on Insta. Just send a DM. Voice messages to 1-800-438-353. Just get in touch. The show is built by you guys, the listeners, so any contribution you have about anything at all, please let me know and I can use it on the show. Go and listen to that Hump Day replay podcast that I mentioned earlier, Hamish and Andy, all the other podcasts I work on. That would be awesome and I would really appreciate it. But As I always say at the end of this podcast, my name has been Radio Mike. This has been The Inside of My Mind. Don't block the MDF, and I am a very kind man, and some of your older staff could learn a lot from me. See you later, guys. I will catch you next week. It's good to be back.